Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Jaden, independent science fiction author, and today I'm going to talk about how I got a grant for my books from my college. This is a funny story. It's kind of a winding story because basically, right, it all started, like a while back. I basically was they had this. I was looking for opportunities to promote my book, and they had this crafts fair on campus. I saw it. I saw the flyer for it. I was like, okay, this is something I could participate in because they had a lot of different types of things there, and I'll get into that. But basically, I was looking for any and every opportunity to promote my book because why not? I had the time to do it. I had written and self-published, my sci-fi novel. I was like, let's do this. Let's get it out there. So I got in touch about that, and they said, yeah, totally. If you want to sell copies of your own book, like we'll get you a table. It'll be no problem. It's kind of an outdoor activity, like a fall weekend kind of thing. So as long as, you know, you drop by a little early, we can set you up with a table, and you'll be all set. So that's exactly what I did. And here's the thing, too. I went into this with no expectations. I was like, okay, we'll get a couple students to wander by. But it turned out to be a pretty popular event. And let me tell you, right, the first half an hour or so, people were just kind of passing by. And what they had crochet, they had people selling art and other cool stuff. And little like bracelets and things like that. Crafts. So I was like, okay, like I'm the only author here. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, I did numbers at that crafts fair. That was a huge W. It just after half an hour of just people passing by and kind of they'd look at my table, they'd be like, okay, and then the first person stopped by, and I basically had to, explain my book to like, oh, you wrote this yourself? Like, what is this about? So I had to explain the book, and they said, okay, they pick up a copy. All right, cool. We got a sale. All right. And I also had posters too. So I was selling some little like posters, artwork. And the next person comes by, and she seems a little more excited. She's like, hey, like, I'm gonna go read this right now. So I'm like, okay, bet like that's exciting. And then I just kept going, and then all of a sudden I get this huge influx of people. They're just like they keep picking it up. Oh, you're that sci-fi guy. All of that. They're just you're that space guy. I think they said, but people just coming in, and before you know it, like um, I had only brought like 10 copies. Yeah, I'd only brought 10 copies, and I sold out. And I had to start directing people to the online linking instead. And I was like, whoa, I was taken aback. And then that girl, this, my second buyer, she came back. She came back a couple hours later, or maybe it was only half an hour. I think it was only half an hour. And she was like, hey, I just read the first chapter. Let's talk about it. And I was like, all right, let's talk about it. But it was a resounding success. And ever since then, I talked to there was kind of the director of arts and engagement, and then there was also like, you know, this other like person who she worked with, this grad student. So I was talking to the director and the grad student, and they're just like, oh yeah, like that's awesome that you did pretty well. We do this, this isn't a one-time thing. We do this like twice or three times a year. So you're on our email list now. We're going to email you in the future to come back. And I was like, all right, now we got something. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. And of course, I was back. And next time I was back with more copies. Winter came and I was back. And that was a slower time, honestly. That was a slower time. I only got a few sales. It was a really gloomy day. It was really gloomy and cold. This was indoors because of bad weather. Not as much traffic. Um, yeah, so that wasn't so great. But it's like it's whatever. It's like as long as I'm selling any book copies, that's so much better than these copies just sitting in my dorm room. I always keep a supply of authors' copies, and I'm like, hey, that still had a great time, like still keeping it positive. And then, of course, the following spring was another slam dunk. So, I mean, let's go. This really helped refine my sales skills. This really helped prepare me for when I go to like more high profile things like conventions and all that. I know how to run my table. I know how to have my pitch down. For my book, I can just pitch it to people. Um, and I needed a Venmo link. I figured that out. Like if I sell out in person, first of all, I learned that I got to bring enough copies regardless. And secondly, if I sell out, then I got to be ready with the online link. So yeah, I was pretty locked in with that. And I look forward to doing more conventions in the future. Now that I'm done with college, I still, have that. But back to the subject of the video, how did I get a grant? Well, that was a funny kind of arrangement. Basically, you know, when you get involved in when you get involved in communities or groups, or in this case, it was a department through my school. Like when you get really involved, people notice and people want to include you in more things. This is why it's so important if you're ever trying to, be an entrepreneur or chase a dream or anything. You gotta network. You gotta get involved. Not necessarily. I don't like the word network because it has these employment connotations. Like I'm just gonna ask people for a job. Like, it makes me think of LinkedIn, and I hate LinkedIn. But I'm really more just talking about like getting involved in communities. Like in my case, as an author, I get involved in writers communities and other things like that. So in this case, I was involved in arts and engagement, not even, intentionally, it just kind of happened. And then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, Jaden, like we saw, you were successful at the convention. Let's, would you like to get like a poster? Would you like to get a little exhibit on campus to get your poster displayed for your book? I was like, you even have to ask me? Like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So we set that up, and I worked with the grad student. We set that up on like a random Monday evening. I had the slot for 2 weeks. I was like, all right, you know what? That's fire. I have it for 2 weeks. I took the photo. I used that photo in my promo videos. But yeah, and people would just walk past and they would see and they'd be like, one guy was like, he's just like Rocky Frontier. I like it. Like, he just thought the name was catchy, which was fire. But I did that. And setting up that exhibit, they're like, okay, the most efficient way we can get you the money to set up this exhibit is we're just going to give you a grant. And I was like, okay. So they gave me the grant, and the exhibit only took about like a quarter of the grant. So I still had, like a few hundred left. So I was like, yeah, now I got a grant, and I just used that for my book related stuff. So you see how this escalated. Like it started off when they're just like, oh yeah, like go to this crafts fair, where imagine if I had just been like, well, I don't think a book is really the same category as crochet and like art and other stuff. So I'm just going to look for different opportunities. I'm just going to pass this one up. I swear, like that's the mentality that some people would do. And I'm just like, I just shake my head at that because I'm just like, why would you not take an opportunity like that? I pitched my book to many different opportunities like that. And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. But in this case, they said yes. And then I happened to do well. And then it led to a further opportunity with the exhibit. And then that led to me getting a grant. So you see how like it was just the momentum. Like I just kept going and going. So yeah, that's basically it. That was how I got a grant for my books. That was back when I had one book out. Now I have the sequel out. So we're really trying to capitalize on momentum right now. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting story to share. If you guys want to stay tuned, keep up with how my author journey is going. Even if you're not a reader, if you're not going to read my books, if you just want to follow and see what happens, what's Jaden up to, then follow the channel and see what happens. Have a good day.